Today, we're going to unpack a pretty fascinating economic mystery. It's really a story about modern-day alchemy, a story that explains how a nation that started with almost nothing somehow became a global powerhouse.
Just think about that for a second. This is the hand Switzerland was dealt. No oil, no gas, no easy resources to pull out of the ground. No vast empire to draw wealth from. On paper, it's a recipe for, well, not much.
And this, right here, is what we can call the Swiss paradox. How on earth does a country that starts with practically nothing end up with, well, pretty much everything? It just doesn't make sense, right? It defies all the normal rules. So what did they figure out that everyone else didn't? What's their secret? Well, that secret, it has a name, and it's an incredibly powerful idea. It's a theory called value density, and this is the key to understanding this entire economic miracle. So what is it? At its core, value density is the art of taking something cheap, something common, and through pure skill, ingenuity, and precision, transforming it into something incredibly valuable and complex. It really is economic alchemy. And this just sums it up perfectly. It's a total shift in mindset. When you don't have a mountain of gold, you have to learn how to turn a handful of sand into a microchip. It's not about what you have, it's about what you can create. Okay, so that's the theory. But how does it actually work in the real world? Let's break down the 3 key ingredients that make up this Swiss formula for success. We're going to see how they turned $1's worth of steel into a $10,000 component, how a ban on jewelry accidentally kicked off a multi-billion-dollar industry, and the absolute genius of mastering the tools that everybody else needs. So let's start with ingredient number 1. You begin with something incredibly basic, something you can get anywhere. For our example, let's say $1 worth of simple, raw steel. Not very exciting, right? But you apply that legendary Swiss precision, the engineering, that skill, and you transform that $1 of steel into a tiny, perfect hairspring for a luxury watch. And suddenly, its value isn't $1, it's $10,000. That's a 10,000 times increase. That is value density in action. The second ingredient is amazing. It's about exploiting a loophole, and it has this crazy origin story. Back in the 1500s, John Calvin bans flashy jewelry in Geneva. So the city's world-class goldsmiths, they could have gone out of business, right? But instead, they pivoted. They took all that skill, all that precision, and channeled it into making intricate, complex watches. A restriction actually became the seed of an iconic global industry. It just proves that constraints can become incredible opportunities if you're clever enough. And this leads to the final ingredient, which is a bit more abstract, but it might just be the most powerful of all. It's this. Don't just make the high-value product. Make the impossibly precise machine that makes the product. That way, you literally control the means of production itself. Yeah, they call this pirate state manufacturing because it's about cleverly capturing value without owning the initial treasure. You take basic stuff like metals, you add a whole lot of ingenuity, maybe a little bit of paranoia, and you create the foundational tools the rest of the world absolutely cannot live without. Think about it. From a landlocked nation come the tools that power global manufacturing. But this brings us to a much more challenging part of this whole strategy. Because when your national goal is to become indispensable no matter what, it can force a really hard question. The source material puts it bluntly. What moral lines are you willing to cross for that kind of prosperity? This relentless pursuit of value density, it can lead down some pretty dark paths. And that leads us to the final evolution of this whole concept. Because what happens when you take value density to its absolute logical limit? You move beyond physical products altogether. All of this history, this strategy of precision and discretion, this knack for, as the source calls it, monetizing paranoia, it all culminates in their ultimate export. And it's not something you can hold in your hand. The very same principles that turned steel into springs are now applied to something intangible. A service. And this quote, wow, this really gets to the heart of it all. The end game isn't just to be wealthy, it's to be essential. To provide a service, think global finance, think international arbitration, that is so deeply woven into the global system that your stability becomes everyone's stability. If you go down, you take the whole system with you. So in the end, the real alchemy wasn't turning steel into watch springs,
The real trick was turning a small, vulnerable, resource-poor nation into an unshakable cornerstone of the entire global system.
And that leaves us with one final thought. Switzerland isn't the only country to use this playbook. Once you have this mental model, this idea of value density, where else do you see it at work? What other nations out there have used this exact same strategy to turn nothing into everything?